Hello, hello, welcome everybody. Uh, really excited to see everybody. I see we have Wayne Mandeville in the house as well. What a wonderful surprise. Welcome to our entrepreneur series sponsored by Nudge and Tech Beach, a 4-part series on building sustainable growth. Today, we're going to talk about ideas to execution in this first part. And I just am extremely excited by who I have the honor and privilege of interviewing and sharing some stories with you today. I have Eldon Marks from Guyana, V75. I have Cal Maloney, co-founder of Tech Beach, and I have Monique Powell, co-founder and CEO of QuickCart. Right. So welcome everybody. Before we jump in, I want to let everybody know we have a wonderful giveaway. It'll be announced tomorrow, and it's the giveaways are actually from our 4 Nudge entrepreneurs: We Pals, Ali and me, Both Designs, Alex Robbie. All right, so look forward to that. And again, sponsored by Nudge and Tech Beach. And I'm going to just jump right in. You know, I'm going to ask Eldon, begin with Eldon first. And Eldon, I'd love you to just tell us a bit about how your company got started. And yeah, just that'd be good. If you can just start with that, how you got started would be wonderful. And also, I'm kind of curious about what is it that you like most about your business, right?
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, that's going to take me back. So the place and time that my company got started was when I was at the University of Guyana, working with a lot of talented youth. And what hit me was that there were hardly any deliberate environments to help them hone their skills. And I was freelancing and teaching, and I realized, I can connect the dots. I can figure out a way in which I can create an institution for these students that had these, the latent potential, and figure out a way to transfer that knowledge. So that got me started with V75 in concept. So it was really a community that was created on the inside, but on the outside, it looked like a company, was a brand. And that grew from there. And right now we are specializing in conversational AI. We also do professional IT services. We build enterprise systems, mobile apps, things like that. But our primary focus is conversational AI, and we have grown since then. We've always been social impact led. We have a nonprofit arm that's called Nexus Hub Inc. as well. And we are also IDB Lab funded under that nonprofit too. And that focuses on creating opportunities for youth to enter into the tech field and start their careers in tech. What I love most about the companies is that it's always been about value first. So what got me started was really just identifying a gap, a problem to solve, and my passion hooked into that. And I was able to ride that wave to date, to create V75 and build it into what it is, and to create a nonprofit.
Fantastic. And I'm going to come back to talk about nurturing that passion a little later on today. And when I got on your website, funny you used the word community. There's a wonderful picture of your team, and I really felt that sense of community when I looked. And both Nudge and Tech Beach are definitely into the community aspect as well. I see you have Kareem giving you a little shout out here from Guyana, Kareem De Silva. So he's saying hi. So Kyle, same thing. Tell us, what kind of got you started, and what do you love most about the business? A little bit, yeah.
It wouldn't be a call if I didn't start off on mute. So yeah, so it's good to be here, Scott. You bring a good vibe and a good energy, man. Always love being on these convos with you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So my story really begins with, I guess, my dad, right? Is first and foremost sort of thing in my mind in these last few months, given that he just recently passed away, and he's been a stalwart in my life and big impact in my family and extended family's lives. He's an entrepreneur. still feels weird to say was, right? So entrepreneur, and so seeing that growing up, seeing him thinking about how we can create value, solve problems, and make life better for the people around him, his community, his family. I really mimicked my life a lot around that. And so I studied engineering, and then from there, came home and I started a tech company called First. It was both my biggest win at that point in time, and then shortly thereafter, my biggest failure. But in life, when you're at your lowest point in life, many times, you're at your highest point of opportunity. As a quote that my father got. I don't know where you get it from, but that's what I remember. He loved to gas me up, man. So even when I was at that point there, I really felt as though that there was something else that I was coming on to, and ended up connecting with Kirk, my co-founder of Tech Beach, and he really sold me on what the opportunity was to connect the Caribbean technology community together and really progress the technology ecosystem in the region. And we're miles away from where we want to be, but significantly progressed from where we were 5 years ago on our journey when we began. And we're excited to bring together these groups of people, like Monique through our accelerator program, and Eldon as well through our accelerator program, and have partnerships like what we have with you guys to really just progress the technology community and the opportunities for technology companies to really make a mark in our region and really catapult us as a Caribbean region. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cal. Cal, tell me what, really lovely to honor your father, your real champion. What was his name?
Curtis Maloney.
Curtis Maloney, man. Fantastic. So we're gonna put this show in honor of Curtis, right? Maloney. And you see, he was an entrepreneur, and there's a respect I have for Caribbean entrepreneurs, in the sense that there's a level. We have a lot of naysaying in the community and in the culture, and for any kind of entrepreneur to really make it and get through, it takes something extra. We can probably talk a bit about that, right, later on. But I want to hear, before I hear from Monique, I want people to start thinking of the kinds of questions we can ask this panel. I had the privilege of chatting with them before, and there's a lot of wisdom in those three faces you're seeing right there. So again, Monique, tell us a little bit about your business, QuickCart, as well, and what do you love most about it?
Right. So QuickCart is a platform that allows people to go online, browse through restaurants and stores that are in their area, place the order online, pay online, and have it delivered to them, usually within 60 minutes. In terms of where it started, or when, it was about 5 years ago. I was still working in corporate at the time, but I had gotten to a place where I was experiencing some amount of burnout. And I think kind of being at that place forced some amount of introspection. And I started to think, okay, so it's been a good run. What's next for you? And I've always been entrepreneurial minded. And I thought, especially since that coincided with the time that I was having this whole idea for this platform. And I decided that maybe now is the time, it's probably now or never. So I decided to take the plunge, and that was in 2016.
Wow, 2016, fantastic. Yeah. So we're gonna jump into that's a lovely segue into where I want to take the next set of questions, right? Because in a sense, you said you had a little bit of a burnout, and you were kind of really ready to kind of take that plunge. And I want to switch to Eldon. From your perspective, Eldon, and this is, I'm talking to also the audience, because I believe that many of you may have your own small business, or thinking about entrepreneurship, or have started. But each of anybody who has a business has had to, at some point, with that idea, make that decision to jump, make that decision to get started, right? And sometimes we are pulled, and sometimes we are pushed, right, a little bit, and it's all good. I love that quote by Curtis in terms of the lowest point, right? We've all had some version of that. So Eldon, I'd love to say in terms of that, what was the impetus that actually had you say, you know what, I'm actually going to go for it, right? And then also what showed up as kind of your first early challenge, kind of once you jumped?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a pull for me. It wasn't much of a push, but the impetus began where, like I mentioned, I identified a gap, and it was, for me, it was just so much untapped potential that we had, and it kept eating away at me to figure out a way in which, you know, all of these talented youth can discover themselves professionally through technology. And I thought about ways in which that can happen in a more, let's see, scalable manner. And I took the leap to register a trading name. And then that for me was that moment where everything began to pull me further along, just to take that first step, a very simple step. It took less than an hour to register a trading name. I had no intentions of really jumping into entrepreneurship. Before then, it was, I looked at entrepreneurs as individuals up on a pedestal. It's like, how could they do what they do? But I ignored all of that, and I felt that pull. It was just solving a problem. And before I knew it, there was a brand attached to it. And then we were speaking to clients, and then there was a lot of knowledge transfer, and that picked up from there. So it was really definitely that pull to solve a perceived gap, to solve a problem.
No, thank you so much. You have me smiling because there's something about registering your business as a simple step that, even though it's a simple step, it has a major impact. And I don't know if anybody else can talk to that on the panel, but it's and you said something really also profound, Eldon. We think of this as a big thing to do, to become a business, to start a business, but isn't it a series of small steps as well, right? Like that, Kyle or Monique, any of you all had an experience when you first, what was it like when you actually registered that business? And you kind of saw that registration. Did you have any kind of reaction for yourself? Monique, I see Monique smiling, so I'm gonna ask Monique, yeah?
Well, I don't know that that was the first, time I felt a certain kind of push. I think for me, it was the first time we signed on the restaurant, and somebody actually signed that contract and sent it back to me, and I felt like, yeah, we're in business. I think that was the first time I felt like, okay, this is a real thing.
Very good. So that first signed contract, right? What was the equivalent for you, Kyle, when you actually say, wait now, there's a business happening here, like something like there's a trade taking place. What was that for?
Exactly, that same point, the trade. That first sale at my company first, I remember it today, still to today. It was a store in West Mall, and I convinced the guy to purchase an advertising package on our platform. And I know that he feel like he was doing me some service in the sale, but the fact that I got him to feel like, you know what, let me support this young man, right? That went miles for me than the few dollars he gave me for the service, Like I walked out there, I was like, this thing is real. Like I'm about to have so much impact. Things are about to be amazing. So yeah, that first sale is when it actually becomes real.
Brilliant. So it's not one of some. So I'm really highlighting some of the highs you have because I'm sure we're going to get into some of the lows. It's really basically a roller coaster, as we say. But before I go on, I want to just acknowledge. I see we have a number of people from different parts of the world, from Germany, from New Jersey, Tobago. I see Oliver giving us some good vibes there as well. So really, really powerful.
Barbados.
Again, think I have so much faith in my panelists. I want you to think of the most challenging question, the question that really that you're most challenged by, right? I'm telling you, we can handle it. So just again, kind of raise up to the challenge of that. So we look for questions coming in, and talking about challenge, right? I think what I would love to jump into a little bit is that roller coaster ride I talked about, right? When you literally are looking to start the business and you do pull the trigger and you get going. I never forgot when I started my business. and literally was a management consulting company and major contract in the UK, tickets booked. And as I'm about to board the plane, literally, I get a call saying the contract's been, there's been a reorganization, contract canceled, right? And it was just a very interesting, it was like, okay, so welcome, right? Now, luckily for me, I had a friend called Francis Wade from Jamaica. And in our little cluster, Francis was the one who kind of went out of corporate and started his the first entrepreneurship amongst us, started a company called Jamaica Teas. And he asked me, he told me, Scott, before you leave your job, I want you to imagine all the worst case scenarios that can happen. And just know that you could deal with those scenarios, right? And luckily for me, I went through that mental exercise. And so therefore, when the person actually canceled the contract, by the way, I actually convinced a couple of colleagues to leave their job and come with me for this contract. All I could do was laugh, actually, and we ended up going to London anyway, and we tried to drum up some more business, but like that. So I'm just curious, you'll have any stories like that where you get going and things are looking good, and then like that. So Kyle, tell us about that disaster, and how, more importantly, more about the disaster. What was the lesson learned that you can kind of begin to share with our audience and with us?
Wow. I was hoping that you go to somebody else first. That's
the big one. All right.
Yeah.
I'll call on Monique. If I can go to Monique, man. We'll cycle back. We'll cycle back for sure, because that's a big one. Yeah. So, Monique, what about you? Tell us. In a way that, has it been all, are you lucky? Has it been all smooth sailing for you, or have you had really some challenges? And what's the one that you're kind of willing to share with us that you think could really serve us some great lessons for us? Yeah?
If you follow Monique on Twitter, Monique is really good at documenting some of those challenges.
I just want one that you think is really shareable and applicable to the theme today of ideas to execution, right? We really want to encourage people in the audience who have the idea. We know that we have great ideas in the Caribbean, but we really want to encourage people to kind of lean into it, but with eyes wide open, So that's what this is about. This is an eyes wide open kind of conversation, right? So Monique, share one of the challenges.
Well, I mean, it's. I don't know if I can't single out one particular one, no. But what I can say is that it has been a constant roller coaster from the very beginning up until now. Just a constant ride of ups and downs and triumphs and troubles and so on. But I think from the very beginning, it was a big adjustment for me, and I'm not sure I fully grasped what I was getting into when I started. And I don't think you ever will. I don't think anybody will ever fully understand what entrepreneurship and building from the ground up involves completely until they actually do start. So even things like managing a team that was bigger than what I was used to, stepping out of an environment that was very corporate, very structured, very white collar, into one that was the complete opposite of that. So just adjusting to the change of environment, adjusting to what was now being required of me, adjusting to not being responsible for just one part of a company, which is basically what you are when you're working in somebody else's organization. So being responsible for everything, your accounting, your HR, your marketing, your everything. And that was a huge adjustment for me, and it took a lot out of me, mentally and emotionally, to really adjust to that.
As you're just sharing there, Monique, I have the privilege of coaching a number of CEOs, and they really remark, people don't understand just how lonely being a CEO is, right? From that perspective. So I kind of got a little bit of that as you were speaking. It's up to you to solve for, right? We have a wonderful question from Audra, and she's asking around to you, Monique, how did you make that transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, right? Well, could you give us some more color around that? And it's a big question because a lot of people are in jobs and they're trying to kind of figure out how not to jump in a major way and splash up against the wall. They want to just get a transition that can work. I'm just curious what you have to share on that.
I think one of the first things is to get yourself financially ready. So what I did do before I took the plunge, I saved what was basically the equivalent of 1 year's salary before I made the plunge, and that kind of made the initial stages, kind of cushioned the initial stages of it a little bit, because one of the things you'll find when you're starting out is that you'll find that you're more of an optimist than you probably ever thought you were. So your revenue is going to be half of what you thought it was going to be, and your expenses are going to be double what you think it's going to be. And whatever profit you thought you were going to make in a year, you probably don't hit that profit level until year 3. So, you kind of want to make sure that if things don't go exactly as you think they're going to go, you have some sort of cushion that can hold you for a little bit. Also, and this is not something that I did before I started, but it's something that I can say that somebody should do, is to also get themselves mentally and emotionally ready. I don't think I was at the beginning ready for how much more weight running a company would put on my shoulders and on me mentally. I don't think I was ready for that, and it kind of took a toll on me in the first couple of years. So I think if somebody who is starting now can kind of put themselves in a place where they understand that, look, this is probably going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. And you want to make sure that you have your support. You want to make sure that your family understands that you're about to do something very hard. You want to make sure your friends understand as well, and that you have that support system. And yeah, kind of just make sure that you also do your research before you start. Because you might be in love with an idea, but you're the only one who's in love with it. So you want to kind of ask around, ask the right people, talk to potential customers, and make sure that what you think is a good thing to bring to the market is actually something that other people would value.
Monique, where were you when I was starting my business? I mean, there's so many nuggets in what you just spoke of there. Getting emotionally ready, right? Having the right level of support, making sure that you have enough cushion and support, right? I was talking to Eldon about this the other day. We are very resourceful as Caribbean people, but it's almost a blessing and a curse. We're too resourceful, and sometimes we figure we can make it work with our resourcefulness and not have enough capital that can have us go by, right? And I love what you said about projections. You usually get half revenue, double expenses. I'm just curious, Eldon or Kyle, anything that Monique said you wanted to kind of build off of, because there was so much there I know you can relate to.
Well, yeah, I can jump in there. I'll hook into what Monique said about the heaping helping of optimism, because I think that's a typical thing. And when I started just reflecting on it, I started with this heaping helping of idealism about the entire journey. And what I found after going through a number of various iterations in starting things up, failure is this rite of passage. So I would always fail first. There would just be this point at which is a sobering moment to really validate whether you have what it takes to persevere and own the path that you've chosen from the inception. So you don't have a full concept of reality. You start with a lot of optimism, a lot of idealism, and then you stumble. And it's never a straight and narrow path. I can tell you, well, everyone knows this under the circumstances, but the point is that the failure there, after passing through that point of failure, and you get to the point where you make that decision, whether you just scrap everything and forget about it, or you dust yourself off and continue and try something different, that's the point that really makes the difference. And that's the point when you actually become, I believe, a solid entrepreneur, that decision that you make with regards to sinking or swimming. So I always, when I start something new, I fail first. There's a lot of obstacles because, looking at it as an analogy, I think of a ship in uncharted territory. There is always a lot of obstacles, but once you're able to carve that particular path in your wake, you would have cleared that particular path, better the next time around, and you can use that wisdom the next time around, and your failures become less and less. So in all, just reflecting on all of this, look at failure as that moment where you validate yourself, whether you're able to make it or not. And usually, if you really have that passion about what you're doing, you'll choose to persevere and go past it. So that's what I have to add.
Thank you, Eldon. As you were speaking, what came to mind for me, and especially as you're from academia, there is a question mark as to whether our school systems prepare us for our relationship with failure, right? And in my experience, it hasn't prepared us too well at all, right? But the nature of R&D, as you're talking about, is failing. Yeah. That's the nature of any kind of innovation and research and development. So it's very interesting you would say that, but I think a lot of us probably not jumping because of how it will look. I'm going to fail from that perspective, So it's very interesting, as you brought that up. Kyle, anything, given that you run a company that's helping entrepreneurs think about their ideas and failure. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as it relates to our region. I think a big failure of our education system is that they pit us against each other from early on, and they set in our minds early on that individualistic mindset that we need to come first in tests, we need to pass for our first choice and beat the person next to us. But in reality, you come out of that system and you're in the world, and everything is collaborative. Like right now we're going through the biggest collaboration experiment ever. Everybody needs to be vaccinated to reduce the likelihood of spread and impact, et cetera, and so it's a very collectivism sort of thing that needs to occur in order to have general impact on our overall society. And that's it. And that sort of thinking is it across the board in every single industry and everything that we do. But for some reason, somebody early on thought it best to create this sort of extreme competitive sort of mentality or approach to us that's been inbred in us. And we think very individualistic, me, myself, and I, how much can I get? How much can I gain? How far can I get up the ladder? And instead of how can we progress as a society? How can we solve problems together? How can we think about our legacy? How can we build things that make today better for somebody tomorrow, and how can we just continuously build on standing on the shoulders of the giants that we stand on for us where we are today. Like every single thing that we use today is because someone thought, how can we take this problem that I have and the solution that I've designed and scale it? The clothes you're wearing comes from somebody that designing at scale, putting it in a store at scale, the platform we use in YouTube, scale, the phone, like every single thing is because somebody's thinking, how can we take this problem that we have and scale this solution significantly, you know?
Fantastic. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much. So you have a couple questions from the audience that they actually took me up on my challenge and have come with some really, really tough questions. So I know we're ready for it. But before I go, I know for the giveaway, one of the criteria is a piece of data that we need. So I want to ask, I'll start with you, Eldon. What was the date of your company's incorporation when it got registered?
Well, the trading name was in 2014 and I incorporated in 2019.
All right, great. What about you, Monique?
We incorporated in 2015.
In 10 and 15. All right, great. And you, Kyle?
2016.
10 and 16, great. So Monique, I have a question that I'm going to put towards you as you brought up this issue of emotional readiness, right? How do you know? This is from Julie Avey in the audience. How do you know you are ready? Financial readiness might be easier to calculate and project, right? It's a point, but
Yeah.
big question. How do you know if you're ready?
I don't think you're ever going to be completely ready. You know, it's one of those things that I feel like if you feel like you're 80% there and you have a few cushions in place somewhere, then you just decide to go for it. Once you've thought about how you'll feed yourself, and if you have a family, your family, until the business gets to where you want it to get to. Once you have thought about the fact that you're about to do something that is difficult, that is grueling, that is probably going to have you working more hours than you've ever worked in your life. Once you've thought about that and processed it in a deep way within yourself, and you said, if after you think about all of that deeply, you still feel like this is something that you want to do, you go for it. Because you're never going to be completely ready. I don't think you ever will be.
I think that is such an honest and probably the satisfactory answer for many people, but it's as honest and real as you could get. There's always something else coming, and I think that's why it's so important to the other point you raised about having the kind of support, and that's why I really feel for Cal's loss, because when you have a champion, somebody that is there regardless, right, is amazing. Cal told me a story that his father opened his own Instagram account, and on his Instagram account, he had the pictures and newspaper of all his children, right? And Cal had to tell him, Instagram is really for you, That's how much of a champion he was from that perspective. I want to bring up a question by now I'll put this one to you, Kyle. A question from Natasha Pantin, and she's saying, this idea of jumping, which I kind of positioned in the beginning about taking that chance to start. She says, how do you know that you're jumping towards the right thing when you're making the move?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because I'm real big on pursuing your purpose and thinking a lot about legacy, about like what will be left when you're gone, and how are you impacting the world around you. And so how do you figure out what you're supposed to do is a question I'm asked a lot. And so this requires, for me, I can give you a good example for me, right? And so my background, I studied aerospace engineering, right? And now I'm connecting people together, right? And so very, very far away from each other. But what has always been like my North Star is my dad telling me, do things that make lives better for people, and in doing so, you will manifest what is your way of doing that. And so I stumbled into this space with Kirk, and until that point, I'd been this is my fifth business. It's a series of trial and being open and trying things that feel natural and innate to you, till you know where your true North Star direction is, and things begin unfolding for you much more quickly than they would necessarily for other people that are trying maybe the same thing. It's like when that footballer or that athlete hits their stride, it's that matchup between talent and skill that only they can do really well in that thing. And I believe within our lives, there is that thing that we can do really, really well at. And once we begin putting some preparation and training behind it, we're going to excel far more than the person next to us, that because their skill set and their talent and their thing is something else,
Well, thank you, Kyle, so much. So Tash, I think the bottom line is you jump and you let your North Star help you as you're jumping and try to find your notes or as your music as in my language. So someone brought up a human capital question I'm going to bring forward, but I'm going to move that towards Eldon, given Eldon has a community that he works within. And I know that Monique might have some ideas when she talked about having to manage staff, lots of staff. That's the other bit of it. So the question Wayne Mandeville is asking is, as leaders, right, what are some of the human capital challenges and moments that you manage, and how do you address these issues through values, right? So wonderful team. I see it's a very young team that you're managing there, Eldon, right, as well. I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges and how do you, what are some of the things strategies you have for that?
Yeah, perfect. It was just to start this off, I'll preface this by saying that it was always a journey of discovery when it came to figuring out the right recipe. And I still haven't figured out the right recipe in terms of addressing human capital challenges to scale and identify the right formula for cohesion and the common core values that should be the foundation of every single team. Early on, there was this idealistic philosophy whereby we would start off as a collective. We would just work together to build together. As you grow, that works for a particular point in time, but as you grow, you'll find that as your company scales, there needs to be this telescoping effect where there will be certain tiers where the more senior individuals will mentor the more junior ones, and then you will be naturally pushed all the way to the top, and you lose that connection to some degree. And when that happens, you'll find that you'll lose touch with regards to maintaining that culture. So early on, I made it a point to focus on defining culture, what it is that we stand for, what are our core values. And I seeded that into the smaller collective. So they practiced it, I demonstrated it. So as they became the lieutenants and as the team grew, that particular collective or collection of core values was passed down. And we eventually became a collective that was self-preserving, whereby individuals with certain personality types that would respond well to the core values were well integrated, whereas others who could not necessarily say that they were compatible with it, they were naturally, excised, so to speak, and they went their way. So one of the first things that I recommend is that you start with a good collection of core values that you seed into the smaller group as you grow your team. And as you grow, you have to become fully aware of the fact that you will naturally have to disconnect, because you would have seeded the original team, but you'll have to naturally disconnect as your team grows. And when that happens, you'll have to pass the baton to your lieutenants, who will then take charge. And it's important, and this is another recent learning of mine. It's important that as your team grows, there is a certain delta that you have to maintain with your larger collective, because it works really well to have your smaller collective be very, very familiar with you. But as your team grows, you have to ensure that that delta is maintained so that you're not as familiar to everyone in your company. And it sounds, for me, it was a hard pill to swallow because I wanted to be everyone's friend. But if you want to grow a highly functioning team, they need to have a certain disconnect with the individual that runs things. So you need to become less of a person and more of an image to them as your team grows. So those are things I can throw out there. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's really food for thought, Eldon. Thank you for sharing that. Monique, on your side, on the human capital side, what are some of the challenges and what are some of the strategies you have? And I'm just curious, does culture play a role with your company as well?
It does. And I think culture isn't whether you have, video games in the office and you have fun time after work on a Friday. I think culture is what are the things that people will learn are important based on the level of importance you place on them as the leader of that team. So that's one of the things that form culture. So if they see that you're obsessed about customer satisfaction, that permeates through the rest of the team. If they see that you are a stickler for quality and you always emphasize that, that permeates through the rest of the team. As to what culture building will look like when the company is much larger and when I don't have direct touch points with everybody on the team, that's yet to be seen. But while it's still small, I think the leader of the team has a huge role to play in establishing what is important, respect for everyone, customer focus, constant customer focus, those kind of things. I think it's important to understand that what you do and what they see you place emphasis on is probably more important than what you say or what you have on some mission statement or vision statement somewhere. In terms of strategies, I think one thing that has stood out to me is the fact that a particular kind of personality is necessary when you're looking for people, or looking for a particular type of personality rather, is necessary when you're hiring for a startup versus, for example, a corporate environment. So for instance, the person who is going to do well in a typical startup environment is someone who has a certain level of comfort with chaos. Because a company that's been around for 50 years will have a lot more established processes in place than a company that's been around for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So you want somebody who will see the chaos and not go crazy or not become overly frustrated, but will take pleasure in solving the problem and saying, okay, how can we declutter these chaotic processes and make something that works smoothly? And then they look at another little part of the business and say, how can we create processes that fix that part of the business, and they actually take pleasure in problem solving. So I think a big part of getting the team right is understanding that a startup requires a certain type of mindset and a certain type of personality.
Thank you so much, Monique, for that. Really powerful. I'm going to ask, so Cal, I have a question for you. And while I'm going to just make an announcement while you're thinking about the question. It's a question from Dean Stephen on what's an effective way to raise capital to fund your ideas. Okay, so that's the question. But I want to mention Tech Beach, the TBR Labs Corporate Innovation Program for Cohort 2. It's starting, the program start date is October 25th, 2021. Right, so I just want just to let people aware of that, that's a program that starting, you probably can find it. Follow Tech Beach, the TBR Lab on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, right? As well as follow Nudge as well on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and LinkedIn as well. So we can't have a conversation on entrepreneurship and someone not ask about funding and money, right? Yeah. So tell me, what's our short answer for that question? That's a very involved, big question, right? But what would you say to that? Is it as simple as join the Corporate Innovation Program at TBR? Or
No. Yeah, that's a question every entrepreneur faces at the start of their venture. And actually, money is something you face throughout, right? But starting, the best way to start in reality is to fund through your own customer base. And that empowers you so much more than taking capital from anywhere else or anybody else, right? Because your customers are the one that give you validation that this problem exists. You're serving a real need, and their customer feedback is what will continue to drive your growth, right? But most often, even to get to that point of even getting a first customer, the reality is that as entrepreneurs, we doing like 3, 4, 5 things just to fund the dream, In reality, like I've spoken to so many entrepreneurs, you're juggling between so many different smaller things, whether it is you have a side job, you have multiple projects, you have a friend, family who believe in you. That's the reality. The reality is that in order to get started, it's a messy start. Unless you come in from some place that you have some fund, a family that can write you a nice big check. And then even I've spoken to founders who even have that and they get a big check. it's still messy to keep things going, because most times, 99% of the time, people are not coming from unlimited well. And most times people are coming from the unlimited well aren't motivated to start these things and solve these problems, you know? So that's the kind of dynamic, right? So it to begin, it takes that sort of grit and determination to figure out where you could pull and capital from, juggling many different things at the same time in order to get it to work. With the main focus, bottom line, you start your venture is make money. How do I take this thing, get my first set of customers, my first group of customers, and take care of them really well, and then begin scaling that experience of happiness that you're giving to those first set of customers, begin doing that again and again. And that at that point in time is when, funny enough, people will begin knocking your door, asking to give you money to put in that venture.
Well, that's, wow, fantastic. And I know that's not often not the answer people really want to hear, but
I give you the real, all right?
no, it's real. It's real. You know, there's yeah. Anyway, so there's a company called Notion that I don't even know of Notion, Kyle, but they were a company that were refusing money and checks in Silicon Valley. It was like the reverse. They got that whole reverse aspect going, and that's kind of where the ultimate sweet spot, right? When you really have something like that.
Yeah.
So we have 10 minutes left. I want to kind of switch to a topic that I really want to address, given that we have been through one of the most really difficult, trying and unprecedented times, where there has been so much loss. And you know, this idea of entrepreneurship, where we talk about this idea of being an optimist, being an idealist, to be able to do that and manage that in this particular time. And I wanted to just kind of you know, ask Kyle. Kyle, you know, has been thinking about a lot, and Monique teed it up with this idea of emotional well-being and health, right, as well, in the context of just without a pandemic, what you have to take on. Are you ready to be an entrepreneur? You layer in the pandemic, and this issue of mental health is really something that you see a lot of our you know, international athletes bringing that up now in a major way. It's something that we really have to address, embrace like that. So Kyle, if you were going to kind of share kind of your journey with that, and what advice you might have for people who are in the audience, who are, you know, managing their own kind of mental health as well. On top of that, they may have been kind of swayed away from, if I don't have my emotional health and mental health, and all, maybe this is not for me. What you have to say for those folks? Yeah,
it's a really good question. I think we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about our struggle in between the high points. And so if you would like look at most of our social media, well, less so on Twitter, because I go back to Monique. Monique is giving you the real on Twitter. But if you look at somebody Instagram per se, or like even like somebody creating a YouTube, these sort of things, right? There's usually be like all the nice highs, the nice fluffy stuff, right? Yeah, celebrating another win. And when I post something like that or whatever, I just be thinking like, people just have no idea what in the world gone into like getting to this point. Yeah. With me in particular, my story is that ever since I was a little child in school, I remember in primary school, right? My teacher I would always be like talking to the kid next to me, or like mind somewhere else. And the teacher would always say, "Kyle, what did I just say?" And I could never tell her what she just said, ever. Because my brain always in like 100 different places, right? At the same time. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, I have to ask somebody, you know? And so even now as an adult is a task. Funny enough, we say that like, I suffer badly with ADD, like adult ADD now, right? But even as a kid, just being able to maintain focus and push through and complete tasks in a consecutive order, for me, it's take a lot. And then the pandemic coming in last year, with me being very extroverted, like I gain a lot of my energy from connecting with people and speaking to them and hearing their stories, to now lock me in a box for months, can't see anybody, can't talk to anybody, just me, my brother, in a household day, man, like I really was like, where's my energy gonna come from? And so I felt like so lackluster, lack of energy, lack of focus, lack of everything. I started seeing a therapist for months. One of my friends recommended that I see a therapist, and in therapy, she reminded me that my energy, my focus, my motivation, everything comes from within, like, and not to look so externally for so much of what really comes from within. And I began meditating a lot. I began focusing on my diet a lot more, realizing how food affects your mental health, how food affects your day, how spending time meditating on a daily basis could really have like a long-term impact on you, and gaining better control of my mind. Actually, this guy, Trinidadian guy who started a company called Allegory, his name is Keston Watkins.
Yes.
He's a really brilliant guy, yeah. He took me through understanding how my mind works and focus exercises to gain better control of my mind. What he's working on, he started off with it being a clinic, personal clinic, and now he's working on technology to help it scale. I think it's something amazing he's doing. The impact that he's having is amazing. That wasn't a plug for it by any means, but yeah. So I've been through and I've been going through a series of these exercises and specific focus on increasing my focus and just getting better control of my mental health, for sure.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Cal, for sharing that. And one thing I wanted to share with folks, I think there's something we can learn from professional athletes, right? Professional athletes who are focused on performance. They have their sports psychologists, they have their nutritionists, they have a whole number of people that are in support of them to get their peak performance, right? And I think we should actually borrow from that, right? So I have a team, I have a therapist, I have an astrologist. I use whatever resources I could get to help me be an extraordinary leader and entrepreneur myself, right? And this aspect of nutrition and well-being, again, keeps coming up as a theme, really, really important if you really want to play the kind of game that we're playing. So Carol, really thank you for sharing that. And we have this kind of little stigma in the Caribbean about that, about therapy, and we need to get over that very quickly if you really care about performance, and really not just performance, but unleashing your potential, really, from that perspective. So I want to kind of end, we have 5 minutes left. I want to end with a question to each of the panelists, just to kind of think about. And the idea here is, if there's somebody in our audience now who is literally on the fence, and let's just say that they are thinking about, yeah, I want to go for it, right? They want to jump, but they're a little hesitant. They haven't jumped yet. And you can give them one piece of advice, right? And we have many pieces of advice. You can tell them one thing today. What would you share with them for them to consider, right? Let me start with Eldon.
Just to distill everything based on the journey that I've been on. The one piece of advice that I would share with someone who's on the fence, who may be considering the entrepreneurial path, is that you've got to find that space within yourself where you are aware of what you can possibly offer the world in terms of value, and weave it in with a vision for doing so, action and intention. And I know that may sound a little abstract, but it's really a matter of just committing, understanding where you stand, what you're capable of offering, and hooking into your passion in delivering. And then you make a very small first step towards that direction. That's all it takes. And then there's going to be a pull effect afterwards, I guarantee you. So that's what I can share.
Very good, thank you. I'm hearing this aspect of having some self-awareness, what you're really capable of. Don't go from a place of that and then tap in your passion to the market. Thank you. Monique.
I'd say if you've already thought about the three things I mentioned before, that personal financial cushion, the mental readiness and understanding that it's going to be really, really hard and demanding, and also making sure that what you want to do is something people will pay for. If you've already thought through those things and you're just plain hesitant, I think it's important to kind of look and say, all right, if 20 years time I look back, would I regret not giving this a try to see whether it would work or not? And personally for me, I don't want too many regrets, especially not regrets of a certain kind when I look back eventually. So if you have thought through just about everything you think you can think through and you're just hesitant just out of fear, then it might be time to kind of just suppress that fear and say, hey, let me go for it. At least now I'll know whether it works or not, rather than in 20 years time looking back and wondering, would it have worked if I'd done it?
Great. Thank you, Monique. Kyle.
Yeah. So underscoring everything everyone here has said, the only thing I'd add is a focus on community. I think that a lot of people operate in their own silos and don't tap into the power of community and realizing that there's so many other people on that journey with them, taking similar type risks, feeling uncomfortable just as they are. And so sharing those experiences as we are here doing now is really a powerful thing. Knowing that you're not alone, knowing that people are facing similar challenges and how they're thinking through their challenges, and maybe sometimes facing different challenges, and you sharing your experiences and your perspective that on a challenge that isn't a challenge for you, but something you don't see as a challenge, something that you see as like, oh wow, that's so obvious, I can do that, empowers you as well, and so gives you greater confidence in going out there to be able to do something and have that impact. And so when you're thinking about getting into the space, identify communities that you think are special and can really help propel you forward. That's going to make a really big difference.
Oh, Carol, thank you so much for that. And I'm so happy this session is being recorded. I'm going to have to re-listen to this again. There's so much wisdom that has been shared on this call, and I really want to thank each and every one of you, all my panelists, for really contributing, really from the heart and from the mind as well. Really appreciate that. I want to end by just saying a couple of things. One, don't forget about the giveaway that we have. The details, you can go on Nudge Caribbean's Instagram to get details on that. And again, really want to thank not just Nudge and Tech Beach, but also our executive producer, Kenesis and Marcus Leafook, right? So thank you so much, everybody. And until next time, we'll announce when our next episode will be in our series on building sustainable growth. Thank you and goodbye.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.